Right, so it's been 12 years since we had the original Skyrim come out. I know it's crazy that it's been that long. And on top of that, Elder Scrolls 6 has been in pre-production since 2018. Of course, that's mainly going to be planning out the lore. It's going to be planning out the characters. It's going to be world building. It's going to be figuring out, what factions do we want within Elder Scrolls 6. And of course, as well, they're going to be developing concept art. During this stage as well, Todd has said in the past what they like to do is start off by developing one area so that you can kind of get a feel for how the gameplay is, how all the systems work, and then they flesh the game out from there. And so, of course, over the last 5 years, the devs have been hard at work doing that part of the game development for Elder Scrolls 6, whilst the main part of the studio has been busy working on Starfield, which is slated to release in September. And then, of course, over the last 6 months kind of time, they are going to be slowly transitioning the devs that are finishing their work on Starfield over to Elder Scrolls 6. Most likely by this point, most of the art team's going to be done. A lot of the story guides would have been fully done with Starfield for like a year by now. A lot of it is going to be, fixing bugs, making sure that it's a really polished game. And so, yeah, Elder Scrolls 6 is definitely going to be well into its development by now. And there are definitely quite a few things that we do know about Elder Scrolls 6, and that's what I really do want to go into within this video. For example, a while back, they shown in a Starfield trailer, on the side of the ship, there was this little picture of what seemed to be Iliac Bay, which rested between Hammerfell and High Rock, and so a lot of players are generally expecting those two areas to encompass the Elder Scrolls 6. Of course, as well, New Year's, a few years ago, they did also as well hint High Rock, so we definitely think that's most likely going to be one of the two continents, and again, maybe Hammerfell as well. But look, a lot of you are probably wondering, what the hell is Hammerfell? What is High Rock? What are these places? So without going over spoilers at all, let's go into the basics, and then you can do your own research if you do want to learn more. One of the things we know for sure is that the main race within High Rock is going to be the Bretons, which are a human-elf hybrid. Their cities, from what I understand, are like a British aesthetic. They've got an aristocracy of nobles, kings, a destitute peasantry, all the kind of things that you would kind of expect from like a Game of Thrones type game. I think that's kind of what they're going for with High Rock, maybe a bit more political intrigue. And that kind of juxtaposes what we see in Hammerfell, which is more of an Arabian aesthetic with barbarian kind of tribes. And then they do also have Redguard towns, which are kind of trying to keep some civility within an otherwise barren wasteland of a desert. There's quite a few interesting things the devs may be considering putting into Elder Scrolls 6, like there's ancient races called the Dairini. There's also this really big tower which was placed by the gods themselves. There's like vampire areas, and there's also this massive tree with like a bunch of lore associated with it where like the roots span across a lot of High Rock, allegedly. And so there is definitely a lot there that Todd can work with, and it is why a lot of people really are expecting those two continents to be what we're expecting to see from the Elder Scrolls 6. Now, a lot of people in my comments in my last Elder Scrolls 6 video was like, oh, why don't they use Unreal Engine 5? And I do quickly want to go into why, because I think this is important. Obviously, from a game development perspective, it would be far easier to design Elder Scrolls 6 with Unreal Engine 5. For those that don't know, everything about Unreal Engine 5 screams that it would be amazing for Elder Scrolls 6, but the reason we're never going to see it happen is because Microsoft has a policy that they want to use their own game engines because they don't want to give a bunch of their revenue to, Unreal Engine 5 as an example, and this is like literally a Microsoft policy, so it's just never going to happen. Now within the Elder Scrolls 6, obviously not everything's going to be new. There are going to be some things from Skyrim which we're used to, like the religions. A lot of the races are probably going to be within the Elder Scrolls 6 that were in Skyrim as well. But essentially now we're seeing those races from Skyrim through a different lens. It's going to be a few of these races as immigrants, as visitors, as diplomats, as merchants, maybe like traveling monks. Those are the kind of things we're expecting to see from Skyrim work its way into the Elder Scrolls 6. From what I understand, Tamriel is kind of like the dragon area, so we don't really know if we're even going to see that many dragons within the Elder Scrolls 6 either, by the way. Now, it's also likely that a lot of the enemy races that we saw within Skyrim are going to be very similar to Elder Scrolls 6. So things like ogres, goblins, and then the fey nature creatures, things like the harpies. It's very likely those are going to be returning staples that we kind of got used to over the course of Elder Scrolls. Now look, there is also a few other things that we know about Elder Scrolls 6. For example, Todd has been extremely supportive of mods through the years, even trying to get players to pay for them, just so that the mod creators are supported more, so they continue to make more content and are incentivized to do a good job because then you get more money. Of course, the community may have not been that happy about that, but that is what, from Todd's perspective, he was trying to do. A lot of the backlash surrounding that issue issue was that only 25% of the proceeds went to the actual modders, 25% went to Steam, and then 50% went to Bethesda, and that's probably the main reason why it didn't work out. It would have probably worked out far better if when you go to download a mod, it gives you the optional choice of donating £1 or £5 to the mod's developer if that's what someone wants to. There's also one other thing that I want to mention here which might annoy some people, but I don't think this game's going to come out for PlayStation as well. So if you do play on PlayStation, you'd have to get like the Xbox Game Pass and basically play it through the cloud, or alternately you'd have to play it through PC. Those would be your two options if you don't want to get the Xbox itself. Todd has also hinted at maybe Elder Scrolls 6 being his last game, but again, nobody can tell what they're going to do, a few years in the future normally, so we'll kind of just have to wait and see on that. Now look, a lot of people also are wondering, including myself by the way, when the hell is Elder Scrolls 6 going to be released? Well, normally there's a 5-year gap in between Bethesda games. It could sometimes even be as low as 4 years. And so for that reason, I wouldn't be super surprised if we saw a 2027 release date, which is absolutely crazy. But there is a little bit more nuance to that because the lawyer behind Bethesda did have to say in a court hearing that they expect to see the Elder Scrolls 6 out in 2026, or at least that's their internal projection of when it's going to release. Now also as well, because Starfield has had that extra year to really mature before they'd released it, because it was supposed to release more than a year ago now, it likely is the case for the majority of that time of Starfield's development. They've actually mostly probably been doing bugs and maybe fixing some story elements and maybe some voiceovers. And so for that reason, a lot of the Elder Scrolls 6 from a development perspective probably is already quite far underway and they are just waiting on the programmers. A lot of the context surrounding the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be predicated on the success of Starfield. If Starfield does come out and it's a really successful game and everyone's super happy with it, that then bodes well for the release of Elder Scrolls 6, likewise being a massive hit, a massive success, or alternately Starfield could be a massive flop. And look, obviously none of us want to see that, but we've seen some games do really well recently. For example, Baldur's Gate 3 has shown how much demand there is for RPG games when they're done right. But on the contrary as well, these AA games do sometimes flop. For example, Mass Effect Andromeda was a really good example of this. It looked great visually, but it just didn't perform in terms of story or characters. Now, of course, over the next few years, we are expecting to see a few really interesting RPG games come out, namely, obviously, Starfield next month. But then on top of that, we've also got Fable, which should hopefully be an amazing game. Obviously, Fable 1, Fable 2, and personally, even Fable 3 for me, I found really fun. Separately to that, we're hoping for a return to form of the Mass Effect franchise, with Mass Effect 1, 2 and 3 being massive commercial successes, being really good RPG games, and I think all the RPG fans are kind of crossing their fingers, hoping that they're going to do a good job with the new Mass Effect game. We'll kind of just have to wait and see, but I am definitely going to be covering on this channel, and for that reason you may want to subscribe. Leave your thoughts, feelings and opinions in the comment section. It's been a pleasure. As always, have a wonderful week. I'm out. GG. Bye-bye.